Scrutinizes. Most traders don't fail because they lack information. They fail because they cannot handle the truth. The truth is brutal, silent, scrutinizes, and indifferent to how much you think you know. It doesn't care about your background, your intelligence, or your ambition, scrutinizes. The market is the great equalizer, ruthless and fair in the same breath. It doesn't matter what you've read, what strategy you borrow, scrutinizes, or how many charts you've memorized. If you cannot control yourself when the market turns against you, you will be eliminated like the rest. Quietly, scrutinizes. Without mercy. No second chances. No sympathy. I've seen it too many times. Men come into the market full of enthusiasm and confidence, scrutinizes. They believe their intellect gives them an edge. They think information is the weapon, that knowledge by itself is protection. But in the market, scrutinizes. Knowledge is cheap, execution is everything. I've seen geniuses lose everything because they could not master one simple truth, scrutinizes, that the market doesn't move for them. It moves through them. And if they resist it, it crushes them. Every new trader believes they will be the exception, scrutinizes. They start small, make a few lucky wins, and suddenly feel chosen. A few good trades create an illusion of control. They mistake randomness for skill, scrutinizes. Volatility for validation. That's how it begins. The sweet poison of early success. That first profit doesn't teach discipline. It breeds delusion, scrutinizes. It convinces you that you figured it out, that your intuition is sharper than others, that you were born for this game, scrutinizes. And that belief is the beginning of every downfall I've ever witnessed. I know because I lived it. When I began, scrutinizes, I thought I could read the tape better than anyone. I believed the rhythm of the market pulsed through my fingertips. I made small fortunes in bucket shops, scrutinizes, watching numbers flicker on the tape, catching moves before anyone else. The profits came easy, too easy. But the ease itself was the deception, scrutinizes. Bucket shops were illusions, they were games built on paper speed, not real structure, scrutinizes. And when I moved from that shallow pool into the deep waters of real exchanges, I discovered what every trader eventually learns, that luck can take you up, scrutinizes, but structure keeps you alive. My first crash was not caused by a bad system. It was caused by arrogance. I thought the same rules applied, scrutinizes. But the market had evolved, execution was slower, spreads were wider, scrutinizes, and my edge, the one I believed would last forever, disappeared like smoke in the wind. I lost not because the market changed, but because I didn't, scrutinizes. I refused to adapt. I refused to accept that my early victories meant nothing in the real arena. And when the losses came, scrutinizes, I blamed everything but myself, the brokers, the rules, the noise. I told myself stories to avoid facing the truth, but deep down I knew, scrutinizes. It wasn't the market that was wrong, it was me, scrutinizes. You see, the market doesn't punish ignorance. It punishes arrogance. It waits patiently for overconfidence to bloom, and then it cuts it at the root, scrutinizes. The most dangerous thing a trader can feel is certainty, because certainty blinds you to the only truth that matters, that you are never in control, scrutinizes. You can only manage exposure, never outcomes. Most traders don't fail because they don't know enough, scrutinizes. They fail because they refuse to unlearn what they think they know. They build fragile empires of confidence on foundations of luck. They size up too fast, scrutinizes. Risk too much and chase patterns that worked once, believing they'll work forever. But the market has no memory. It doesn't reward consistency of belief, scrutinizes. It rewards consistency of discipline. And when discipline fades, everything else crumbles. The first phase of every trader's life is intoxication, scrutinizes. The charts look beautiful, the movements predictable, the profits within reach. Every tick feels personal, every signal meaningful, scrutinizes. But the moment you believe you've mastered it, the market changes its rhythm. And you realize too late that mastery doesn't exist here, scrutinizes. Only adaptation does. The illusion of skill is seductive because it feels earned. You study, you analyze, you trade, and you see results, scrutinizes. But what you don't see is that the market often rewards bad behavior in the short term. It reinforces poor habits with lucky outcomes, scrutinizes. That's the cruelty of this business. It lets you win just enough to make you forget that you're still untested. Then, one day, scrutinizes, it takes everything back. Not as punishment, but as correction, scrutinizes. The difference between a trader who survives and one who vanishes is how they respond to that correction. Most double down, scrutinizes. They refuse to believe the loss is their fault. They chase recovery, not understanding that the market doesn't owe them balance, scrutinizes. It doesn't care how much they lost or how badly they need to make it back. The market is not aware of you. It only listens to price and discipline, scrutinizes. And those who don't listen to it end up paying for their education with their capital, scrutinizes. When I lost my first fortune, I learned the hardest truth of all: success means nothing if you can't repeat it under pressure, scrutinizes. Anyone can make money when the wind is at their back, but trading is not about the easy days. It's about the moments when nothing works, scrutinizes. When your confidence cracks and you must decide whether you'll obey your plan or your fear. Most choose fear. That's why most fail, scrutinizes. The illusion of skill fades quickly when tested by pain. The market doesn't measure intelligence, it measures behavior. It doesn't care what you think, scrutinizes. It only records what you do. And when what you do is inconsistent, impulsive, or emotional, the outcome is always the same. Failure disguised as bad luck, scrutinizes. But it's not bad luck, it's bad discipline. Every trader believes they'll be different, scrutinizes. That they'll be the one who keeps control when everyone else loses, scrutinizes. They think discipline is something they can summon when needed, like a switch they can flip during chaos. But discipline doesn't appear under pressure, scrutinizes. It's built before pressure arrives. It's not a decision you make in the moment. It's a habit you've made so unbreakable that no emotion can overpower it, scrutinizes. And yet most traders don't build that habit, they build hope instead. Hope feels good. It's comforting. It whispers that maybe this trade will turn around, scrutinizes. Maybe this dip will bounce, maybe the next candle will prove you right. Hope keeps you watching a losing position, telling yourself you're patient, scrutinizes. When in reality you're just afraid to be wrong. Hope is the drug that keeps traders from cutting their losses, scrutinizes. It numbs the pain of admitting a mistake, but it amplifies the cost of every hesitation. I've seen traders destroy themselves slowly, scrutinizes. Not through one catastrophic mistake, but through small, constant acts of denial. They watch their position bleed and tell themselves stories to stay calm, scrutinizes. They zoom out their charts to make the loss look smaller. They scroll for news that justifies holding, scrutinizes. They tell themselves they're being long-term, but deep down they know the truth. They just can't face it, scrutinizes. Because closing a losing trade doesn't just hurt your account. It hurts your ego. It forces you to admit that your judgment was wrong, scrutinizes. And most people would rather lose money than lose face. I've done it myself. I've held trades far beyond reason, convincing myself that I was being smart, scrutinizes, patient, strategic. But none of those words were true, scrutinizes. I was being emotional. I was waiting for the market to forgive me. Something it never does. I remember one trade in particular, scrutinizes. A position that looked perfect at entry. The setup was textbook. Everything aligned, but it turned, slowly at first, then sharply. My stop was hit, scrutinizes. But I didn't told myself it would recover. It didn't. The price fell harder. Still I held. I adjusted my reasoning each hour, scrutinizes. Rewriting my logic to protect my ego. By the time I finally closed it, the loss was 10 times what it should have been, scrutinizes. That one mistake erased months of discipline. And worse, it taught me how fragile discipline can be when pride interferes, scrutinizes. That was the day I learned that risk management isn't about numbers. It's about obedience. A stop loss means nothing if you don't follow it, scrutinizes. A rule is useless if it bends under emotion. The difference between a trader and a gambler is not the strategy. It's the willingness to accept being wrong. Scrutinizes. A small loss is tuition. A large loss is punishment. The only difference between them is time, scrutinizes. Every second you wait to cut a loss is a second you trade discipline for denial. And the longer you wait, the more expensive denial becomes. You see, scrutinizes. The market doesn't destroy people instantly. It gives them chances. Countless chances. To act, to correct, to escape. But most don't take the scrutinizes. They keep hoping. And hope, left unchecked, becomes a coffin lined with good intentions. The irony is that cutting a loss feels like defeat, scrutinizes. But it's actually survival. Every trader who lasts in this business knows that the first duty is preservation, not prediction. The goal is not to be right, scrutinizes. It's to stay in the game long enough to be right again. That's what most traders never understand. They chase victory instead of endurance, scrutinizes. They think the goal is to win every trade. But the real goal is to never lose so much that you can't return, scrutinizes. The most dangerous losses don't come from bad markets, scrutinizes. They come from hesitation. That single moment when your logic says hikes it, and your emotions say quit. That tiny pause is the space where failure begins, scrutinizes. You don't see it immediately, but in that moment you've surrendered control. And once you surrender it once, it becomes easier to surrender again, scrutinizes. When I was younger, I believed the secret to trading was in sight, seeing what others missed. Later, I learned that the real secret is restraint, scrutinizes. Knowing when not to add to trade, when not to interfere. The hardest trades I ever made weren't the entries. They were the exits, scrutinizes. Not because of complexity, but because of ego. It's hard to close a losing position when you still believe you're right, scrutinizes. It's hard to walk away when the story in your head says, wait a little longer. But the truth is simple. The longer you wait for a bad trade to recover, scrutinizes. The more power you give to the market and the less you have left for yourself. You can't negotiate with price. You can only protect yourself from scrutinizes. That's why risk control is not optional. It's oxygen. It's the single thing separating those who survive from those who don't, scrutinizes. People talk about high probability setups, but probability means nothing if your downside is unprotected, scrutinizes. Because one wrong trade can erase years of steady progress. And that's the part most traders never accept until it's too late, scrutinizes. They think risk management is a dull topic, something only cautious people care about. But the market doesn't punish caution. It punishes carelessness, scrutinizes. Every overleveraged position, every oversized bet, every ignored stop. It's a ticking bomb. And the fuse is always shorter than you think. In my time, scrutinizes. I saw countless men who started strong, made fortunes, and then lost it all, scrutinizes. Not because they didn't know how to win, but because they didn't know how to stop losing. They believed that success meant never retreating, scrutinizes. But the best traders retreat constantly. They cut, reduce, adjust, and survive. They take pride not in winning, but in staying alive. Everything is gone, scrutinizes. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't give you adrenaline, it gives you boredom. And boredom is what kills most traders. They can't sit still, scrutinizes. They feel the need to act, to chase, to make the screen move. But the market doesn't reward motion. It rewards precision. You can spend all day trading, scrutinizes. But if your timing is wrong, activity only amplifies damage. I learned to wait, to sit on my hands and let the market come to me, scrutinizes. I used to think patience was passive. Now I know it's the sharpest form of control. Patience is not inaction. It's preparation, scrutinizes. It's restraint sharpened by understanding. And those who master it outlive everyone else. You see, most traders fail long before their account goes to zero, scrutinizes. They fail when their patience runs out. They fail when they replace analysis with impulse. When they abandon structure for excitement, scrutinizes. That's when the fall begins quietly, invisibly, long before the actual collapse. The truth is, failure in trading isn't sudden. It's cumulative, scrutinizes. It builds in small compromises, holding a loser one day longer, ignoring a stop just once, increasing size to recover a bad day. Each act feels insignificant, scrutinizes, but together they form a pattern, and patterns of undisciplined behavior are always discovered, not by others but by the market, scrutinizes. And the market never forgives them. If you can't take a small loss today, you'll take a massive one tomorrow. That's the law of trading gravity, scrutinizes. And no one escapes it. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you begin to trade like a professional. Not with ego, but with endurance, scrutinizes. The market has one rule above all: it always tests your weakest habit. If your weakness is overconfidence, it will reward you just enough to make you reckless, scrutinizes. If your weakness is hesitation, it will tempt you to delay until the pain is unbearable. And if your weakness is ego, scrutinizes, it will give you glory just long enough to watch you destroy yourself with it. That's why the real enemy is never the market. It's you. Your habit, scrutinizes, your impulses, your need to be right. You can read every book, memorize every chart pattern, scrutinizes, and still fail. Because none of that matters if you don't master yourself. The market doesn't beat you. You beat yourself. And you do it slowly, scrutinizes. Beautifully, rationally, with logic that sounds right and decisions that feel justified. Until one day you look up and everything is gone, scrutinizes. Every trader imagines they'll stay calm when chaos comes. They picture themselves collected, logical, detached, the perfect executor of reason, scrutinizes. But that illusion vanishes the moment real money is on the line, because once emotion enters the room, logic quietly leaves, scrutinizes. You can rehearse discipline when the market is calm, but discipline isn't tested during stillness. It's tested in the storm. Routinizes. When the candle drops faster than you can blink. When the red numbers blur. When your pulse quickens and your palms begin to sweat. Routinizes. That's when the real trader appears. Not the one you imagined, but the one you've trained yourself to be. In those moments, routinizes. Your greatest threat isn't the market, it's your reaction to it. The human mind wasn't designed for uncertainty on this scale. It craves control. Routinizes. It wants certainty, but the market offers neither. The result is panic disguised as decision-making. Traders act not because the market demands action, routinizes, but because silence feels unbearable. They trade to escape discomfort, not to execute structure. I've lived that pain. I've sat in front of the ticker, routinizes, watching a position slip further away, convincing myself that I was still in control. But I wasn't. My emotions were, routinizes. And emotions are deceptive. They sound rational, but they serve fear. Fear tells you to close too early. Greed tells you to hold too long. Routinizes. Both lead to the same destination, inconsistency. Routinizes. That's what ruins most traders, not ignorance, but inconsistency. They build a system, test it, routinizes. Swear they'll follow it, then abandon it the moment discomfort appears. And that single act of betrayal repeats until the system means nothing, routinizes. The market punishes inconsistency more than it punishes inexperience. A bad system followed with discipline will outperform a good one violated by emotion, routinizes. Because the market rewards one thing only, execution. There was a time when I believed emotions could be eliminated, that the goal was to feel nothing, routinizes, to become robotic, but I was wrong. Emotions can't be removed, they can only be recognized, controlled, redirected. You don't defeat emotion by denying it, routinizes. You defeat it by acting in spite of it. When fear whispers, you acknowledge it and execute anyway. When greed tempts, routinizes, you see it, and still exit according to plan. That's real discipline. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being unaffected, routinizes. I once met a trader who never showed emotion. He sat still, quiet, precise, the perfect image of control. But inside he was chaos, routinizes. He suppressed every feeling until it finally erupted in a single catastrophic mistake. That's the danger of emotional denial. It doesn't vanish, it hides, routinizes. And when it reappears, it does so at full strength, routinizes. Real control is not suppression, it's awareness. It's the ability to see your fear rising, to recognize greed forming, routinizes, and to act according to logic anyway. That's what separates the consistent from the doomed. When I look back on my own career, routinizes, the trades that broke me weren't the ones that went wrong. They were the ones I refused to accept were wrong, routinizes. That refusal turned small losses into disasters. It wasn't the market's fault, it was my pride pretending to be patience. You see, routinizes. Pride is the deadliest emotion in trading because it wears the mask of confidence. Pride tells you you're too skilled to fail, routinizes. That the market owes you a reversal. That you can outweigh a mistake. And the moment you believe that, the market shows you how wrong you are, routinizes. Confidence is built on data, pride is built on delusion. Confidence says, I trust my system. Pride says, I am the system. One protects you, routinizes, the other destroys you. I've seen pride take everything from men smarter than me. They had resources, information, access. But no humility, routinizes. And without humility, trading becomes a battle of ego. You stop reading the tape, you start reading yourself into it, routinizes. You don't analyze the price, you interpret it to fit your belief. You start seeing what you want to see, not what's real. And when that happens, routinizes, you're finished. The tape doesn't lie, but your interpretation can. That's why humility isn't weakness. It's armor, routinizes. It keeps you honest when your mind tries to cheat you. Trading humbles everyone eventually. It doesn't matter who you are, routinizes, how talented you believe yourself to be, or how many times you've been right. The market will find your weakness. It will expose it, amplify, routinizes. And if you don't correct it, it will use it to end you, routinizes. And here's the hardest truth it's supposed to. The market isn't there to make you rich. It's there to test your behavior, routinizes. Profit is just the byproduct of discipline. That's why most traders never get there, because they chase the byproduct, not the process, routinizes. They focus on the result, not the routine. They want success without structure, freedom without responsibility, gain without pain. And those desires are fate, routinizes. This business isn't about predicting where price will go. It's about preparing for what happens when it doesn't, routinizes. Every successful trader understands this. Every failed trader ignores it. I used to trade with the obsession to be right. Scrutinizes. Every loss felt like an attack on my intelligence. I'd double down to prove I wasn't wrong, and for a while it worked. I'd win back the loss. Scrutinizes, sometimes even more. But that temporary relief came at a cost. I was reinforcing a bad habit. Each time I recovered through recklessness. Scrutinizes. I taught myself the wrong lesson that breaking rules could still lead to profit. That illusion of control is what destroys people. Scrutinizes. Because it works until it doesn't. And when it stops working, the fall is swift, merciless, and complete. Scrutinizes. There came a day when I doubled down again, and this time it didn't come back. The loss didn't reverse. It accelerated. Scrutinizes. My system screamed exit, but my ego said quit. By the time I finally obeyed, the damage was irreversible. I didn't just lose money. Scrutinizes. I lost the one thing that made me a trader, my discipline. That moment taught me more than any book ever could. Scrutinizes. The lesson was simple but brutal. Every rule you break will eventually break you. Since then, I've built my life around one truth. Scrutinizes. Trading is not about being fearless, it's about acting with structure in the presence of fear. The market will always be uncertain. Scrutinizes. But your response doesn't have to be. People often ask me what makes a trader last. It's not intelligence. It's not instinct. It's not even timing. Scrutinizes. It's respect for the market, for your system, for your limits. The moment you lose that respect, you've already lost the game. Scrutinizes. When I sit at the desk now, I don't chase excitement. I don't chase perfection. I chase consistency. Scrutinizes. Because I've learned that real freedom in trading doesn't come from big wins. It comes from control. Control over emotion, over reaction, over temptation. Scrutinizes. And the irony is that the traders who chase freedom the hardest, the ones who want to escape the rules, end up prisoners of their own behavior. Scrutinizes. While those who submit to structure find liberation within it. Trading is a paradox. The more control you try to exert over the market, the less control you have. Scrutinizes. The more you try to predict, the more you react. But when you control yourself, when your actions are grounded, repeatable. Scrutinizes. Discipline, that's when the chaos begins to obey you. The market mirrors your behavior. If you're chaotic, it becomes chaos. If you're patient, scrutinizes, it becomes opportunity. If you're structured, it becomes order. You don't trade the market, you trade your reflection in it. Scrutinizes. Most people will never understand that. They think they're fighting the market, but they're fighting themselves. And until you stop fighting yourself, scrutinizes, you will never win against anything else. This is why, even after decades, I still prepare before every trade. I don't just analyze charts. I analyze myself. Scrutinizes. I ask, am I calm? Am I clear? Am I ready to obey my own rules? Because if the answer to any of those is no, I don't trade. Scrutinizes. No opportunity is worth a compromised mindset. That level of discipline is not glamorous. It's lonely, repetitive, and often dull. Scrutinizes. But that's the price of longevity. Most traders don't pay it. They chase stimulation instead. And stimulation, in this business, is poison. Scrutinizes. The truth that nobody wants to hear is that boredom is the foundation of mastery. The repetition, the waiting, the restraint. That's where the edge is built. Scrutinizes. Because when the chaos finally arrives, and it always does, you'll only survive if your habits are stronger than your emotions. Scrutinizes. There comes a moment in every trader's life when the pursuit of profit transforms into something else. A search not for wealth, but for understanding. Scrutinizes. You start to realize that every trade you make is simply a reflection of who you are. Every mistake, every hesitation. Scrutinizes. Every impulsive click. They're all pieces of a psychological mirror. When I was young, I thought trading was about markets. Later, scrutinizes, I discovered it was about people. And finally, I understood it was about one person, me. The market was never my opponent. It was my teacher. Scrutinizes. Every loss was a lesson. Every win, a test of whether I'd learned it. That's the cost of mastery. It's not the hours or the charts or the sleepless nights. Scrutinizes. It's what you have to give up. Ego, excitement, the desperate need to always be right. Those things feed your pride, but they poison your process. Scrutinizes. You learn that the most dangerous point in trading isn't when you're losing. It's when you start winning easily. Because easy success is deceptive. Scrutinizes. It breeds carelessness, it feeds arrogance. It whispers that maybe you've finally outsmarted the market. That's the most seductive lie of all. Scrutinizes. The market doesn't care how well you've done. It doesn't reward your effort. It doesn't remember your last win. Routinizes. The moment you believe it owes you something, it takes everything. I've watched traders destroy themselves not out of ignorance, but overconfidence. Routinizes. They built fortunes only to lose them by believing they were invincible. The market loves to humble men who think they've conquered it. Routinizes. I know as one of them. I once thought my instincts were flawless. I believed I could feel the market turning before anyone else. Routinizes. Till I wasn't. That confidence blinded me to my own error. I stopped verifying. I stopped questioning. Routinizes. And that single lapse in humility cost me more than money. It cost me my identity. When you tie your worth to your results, routinizes, every loss feels like personal failure. You stop trading the market and start trading your emotions. That's how careers end. Not with bankruptcy, routinizes. But with most, you see there's a silent tax in trading. Not financial, but emotional. The constant pressure, the isolation, routinizes. The invisible battle between confidence and fear. It wears you down. Every day you fight for clarity, for control, for peace. And some days the fight wins, routinizes. That's why I've always said the most important rule in trading isn't about entry or exit. It's about survival. Because if you can survive long enough, routinizes, the market will eventually reveal its rhythm to you. But you'll never hear that rhythm if you're too busy chasing noise, routinizes. Most traders don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they can't stay in the game long enough to learn how to win, routinizes. They burn out chasing shortcuts or they blow up trying to double their way to redemption. But this game doesn't reward speed. It rewards endurance, routinizes. The traders who last are the ones who know how to protect themselves from the market, from temptation, from themselves, routinizes. I've learned to think of trading not as a battle for profit, but as a discipline of preservation. You don't trade to conquer. You trade to endure, routinizes. The market doesn't require you to be brilliant, only consistent. It doesn't demand perfection, only respect, routinizes. And that respect starts with understanding risk, not as something to avoid, but something to manage. Risk is the cost of admission, routinizes. It's the toll you pay to sit at the table. Refuse to pay it, and you'll be thrown out. The irony is that the best traders are the most cautious, routinizes. The strongest are the most humble. The richest are often the least flashy, because they understand. Once you've survived enough storms, routinizes, you stop celebrating sunshine. You simply prepare for the next one. Every trade I take now is quiet, measured, detached, routinizes. I don't feel the need to prove anything. My goal isn't to be right, it's to be consistent, routinizes. And that shift from performance to process is what saved me. Discipline became my anchor. It's not exciting, but it's powerful, routinizes. It's what keeps you steady when everyone else is drowning in noise. And here's the final truth. Mastery isn't about control. It's about surrender. Routinizes. You stop fighting the market. You stop forcing outcomes. You start listening. You start aligning. Routinizes. You become patient enough to let the market show its hand before you play yours. There's a beauty in that kind of stillness. The quiet confidence of wait, routinizes. The peace of knowing you don't need to chase, because opportunity always returns. That's what experience gives you. Not invincibility, but perspective, routinizes. You stop measuring your worth by wins or losses, and start measuring it by how well you followed your plan. Because over time, that's all that matters, routinizes. Most traders will never reach that point. They'll quit before they learn it. But the few who do, the ones who endure the pain, routinizes. Who stay humble through the victories and patient through the setbacks. They'll discover what the rest never will, that the real reward isn't the money, routinizes. It's mastery over oneself. The market doesn't shape you by chance. It shapes you by resistance. Every obstacle, every loss, routinizes. Every false start, they're all carving discipline into your mind. Every failure is an invitation to evolve. And the greatest irony of all, routinizes. The day you stop chasing profit, you start becoming profitable. Because your focus shifts from outcome to execution, from fear to process, from chaos to clarity, routinizes. I often think back to my younger self, the reckless dreamer, the gambler in a suit, the boy who believed he could tame the market. If I could speak to him now, routinizes, I'd tell him this: you'll lose more than you win. You'll suffer more than you expect. You'll question yourself 1,000 times, routinizes. But if you endure, if you learn to respect the market more than you fear it, You'll earn something no money can buy. Routinizes peace. That's the ultimate destination of every trader's journey. Not wealth, not fame, not glory, but peace, the kind that comes only from mastery. Routinizes. So when the world talks about trading as a way to get rich, I smile. Routinizes. Because those who've walked through the storms know the truth. This isn't a game of riches, it's a test of resilience. And those who survive it, routinizes, who endure every rise and fall with discipline intact, are the ones who've truly won. That's what I learned from a lifetime in the market. Routinizes. That's what I hope you understand before it's too late. Because the market will always be there. The question is, will you? Routinizes. So take this advice from a man who's lived both sides of fortune. Trade with structure, think with clarity, act with humility. Protect your capital. Routinizes. Respect the risk. And never ever let emotion dictate your execution. Because in the end, the trader who lasts the longest wins. Routinizes. There's a moment after every trade closes, whether it's a gain or a loss, when the room feels impossibly quiet. No tickers, no charts, just silence. Routinizes. That silence is where truth lives. That's when you ask yourself the only question that matters: did I follow my plan? Because over time, routinizes, you learn that the real contest isn't between you and the market. It's between who you are and who you need to become to survive it. So, routinizes, when you sit before your screen tomorrow morning and that old familiar rush begins, remember this: your job isn't to predict the market. Routinizes. It's to protect yourself from yourself. Because once you master that, the profits will come. Not because you chased them, but because you stopped needing to. Routinizes. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover what took me a lifetime to learn. Routinizes. That the greatest trade you'll ever make is peace with the uncertainty that defines this game. Because in the end, routinizes, that's what separates the survivors from the casualties. The ability to stand calm in chaos and to trade not for riches, but for mastery. And that, routinizes, my friend, is the only way to win. Routinizes. The market doesn't give you with a single bad trade. It breaks you in inches, slowly, quietly, through impatience, ego, and greed. Routinizes. It doesn't punish ignorance, it punishes arrogance. And it rewards those few who are humble enough to admit they don't know what comes next. Routinizes. But disciplined enough to act as if they do. I've seen it all: the chaos, the bubbles, the crashes, the fortunes made and lost in a breath. Routinizes. And through it all, one truth never changed: risk is the price of participation. You can't escape it, you can only respect it. Every tick you see, routinizes, every candle that forms, every surge of volume, it's just human emotion dressed up as data. Hope, fear, greed, and regret. Repeating, evolving, devouring. Routinizes. That's what makes the market eternal. Technology changes, but emotion doesn't. That's why history repeats and why traders don't. Routinizes. The strongest traders are not the ones who win the most. They're the ones who endure the longest. Routinizes. They know that survival isn't about prediction. It's about preparation. It's about taking small, routinizes, deliberate losses so you can stay alive long enough to catch the big win that matters. Every trade, every mistake, routinizes. Every sleepless night teaches you one thing. Control isn't found in the market, it's found within. The market has no memory, but you do. Routinizes. And if you're wise, you'll use that memory not as a burden, but as your edge. That's why, after all these years, I no longer chase perfection. Routinizes. I chase discipline. I no longer chase certainty. I chase adaptability. Because the market never stops changing, and those who can't evolve with it disappear. Routinizes. There's peace in that realization, the kind that only comes when you've finally stopped fighting the tide and started moving with it. Routinizes. That's when trading becomes more than a profession. It becomes a form of meditation, an act of patience, awareness, and control.